In the heart of a bustling city, where most people are too busy to notice the little things, a powerful story of kindness and transformation was about to unfold. It was a cold, rainy morning when Alexander Grant, a reclusive but wildly successful Millionaire CEO, stepped out of his sleek black SUV on his way to a board meeting. Known for his ruthless business acumen and unmatched intelligence, Alexander was the last person anyone would expect to stop for a stranger. Yet, on that day, something caught his eye that would change not only his life but also the life of someone who had all but been forgotten by the world. Under the rusted shelter of an old bus stop, curled up on a bench with nothing but a worn-out blanket and a threadbare teddy bear, was a little girl no older than 7. Her face was pale, her clothes soaked from the rain, and her small hands wrapped tightly around her knees as if trying to disappear from the world. People walked by without looking. Some noticed but quickly turned away. But Alexander didn't. He stopped. For a long moment, he just stood there, watching her. Something stirred in his chest, an unfamiliar ache. Without thinking, he walked up to the bench and said gently, "Come with me." The little girl looked up, her big eyes filled with fear and confusion. She didn't speak. She simply stared, unsure whether to run or stay. Alexander knelt beside her, his suit dampening from the rain, and held out his hand. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "Let me help." It took several moments, but something in his voice must have reached her. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her tiny hand in his. Alexander didn't take her to a police station or a shelter. He took her to his home, an enormous penthouse that overlooked the entire city. It was a place of silence, cold marble, and chrome, more like a museum than a home. But that night, it changed. He gave her dry clothes, warm soup, and a bed with the softest blankets money could buy. He didn't ask her too many questions at first. He simply made sure she felt safe. The next day, Alexander canceled all his meetings. His assistants were baffled. This was a man who once held a video conference during a kidney stone surgery. But nothing was more important to him than this little girl now. He brought in a child psychologist, not to interrogate her, but to help her open up in a safe space. Slowly, the girl, whose name was Lily, began to speak. Her story was heartbreaking. Her mother had died a year ago, and her father, once a kind man, had fallen into addiction and eventually disappeared. She had been on the streets for months, surviving on scraps, running from danger, and clinging to her mother's memory. The teddy bear was her only comfort, something her mom gave her before she passed. She had no family, no one to turn to. Until now, as the days turned into weeks, something remarkable happened. Alexander, a man whose life revolved around power, numbers, and control, began to soften. He started spending more time at home, reading bedtime stories, cooking meals, or at least attempting to, and learning what it meant to care for another human being beyond business transactions. The mansion began to fill with laughter. Lily, once withdrawn and silent, started to sing, draw, and smile again. But it wasn't just Alexander who changed. Lily, too, transformed. With stability, safety, and love, she began to thrive. She had a tutor, a therapist, and a room filled with toys and books. More importantly, she had someone who showed up every day, no matter what. Someone who saw her not as a burden, but as a gift. Alexander began to reflect on his own past. He had grown up in a foster system, shuffled from house to house, never feeling wanted. He had built an empire to prove his worth, to never be powerless again. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it felt like to be human. Lily reminded him. The media eventually caught wind of the story. Photos of the hardened CEO walking hand in hand with a little girl outside a toy store went viral. Speculations ran wild. Was it a PR stunt? A publicity move? But those who truly knew Alexander saw something different in his eyes. For the first time in decades, he looked alive. He released a statement, not to the press, but to his employees. In it, he wrote, "Sometimes life gives you a second chance in the most unexpected form. For me, it was a child sleeping on a bench. I saw myself in her, lost, cold, forgotten. But I also saw hope. And that hope has become the most important part of my life. I'm not stepping away from the company. But I am stepping into something far more meaningful, fatherhood." Alexander formally began the adoption process. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth it ever is. There were legal challenges, background checks, and long interviews. But he faced them all with the same determination he once reserved for billion-dollar deals. And when the papers were finally signed, Lily became not just a guest in his home, but his daughter. On the 1-year anniversary of the day they met, Alexander and Lily returned to that bus stop. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to remember. They brought blankets, toys, and food for anyone who needed them. They left a note on the bench that read, "This place changed our lives. If you're reading this and you're lost, know that someone out there cares. You are not forgotten." The transformation of a man who once measured success in stock prices to someone who now measured it in bedtime stories and school projects became a symbol of hope for many. People wrote in, sharing their own stories of struggle and redemption. Others reached out, asking how they could help children in need. What began as one act of kindness turned into a movement of compassion. Lily would later say in an interview, "He didn't just save me. He became my dad. I don't know why he stopped that day, but I'm glad he did. He gave me more than a home, he gave me a future." Alexander, now retired from the CEO role, spends his time running a foundation that supports homeless children and families. The name of the foundation? The Lily Project. Its mission is simple: to ensure no child sleeps alone on a bench in the rain again. Every month, Alexander and Lily visit shelters, schools, and foster homes, sharing their story and reminding others that love can be found in the most unlikely places. The cold marble floors of the penthouse are now warm with carpets, toys, and the sound of a family that grew not by blood, but by heart. And all it took was one moment, one decision to stop, to see, and to act. Come with me. 3 simple words.